Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Everyone into the webinar here. Just letting you know that we'll get started in just a moment as people are entering into the Teams meeting here. We'll get started in about 1 minute. It looks like the enroll going up a little bit. So I will get us started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on the Voluntary Family Reading History Questionnaire. My name is Deputy Commissioner Charles Hughes. We celebrate the collaboration between two of our State Department of Ed offices, the Center for Literacy Research and Reading Success and the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities. Pursuant to Section 1014 EE of the Connecticut General Statutes, the State Department of Ed is required to approve a voluntary family history questionnaire to assist you all, districts, in identifying students at risk of reading proficiencies. The outcome of this team's work was really the questionnaire guidance that was published in December of 25 and shared on December 15th. Today's webinar is specifically designed to support you in understanding the origin of the guidance and some of the key requirements as per statute. So thank you very much for joining attendance. And at this point in time, I'm going to hand it over to the team to bring you through today's webinar and answer any questions that you might have. So team, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Hughes. Welcome and thank you for being with us today. My name is Kristen Allen and I am an Associate Education Consultant at the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities. And I'm just going to pause briefly to invite my colleagues from the Center for Literacy to introduce themselves as well.
My name is Candace LaConte. I am an Associate Education Consultant with the Center as well. And Caroline?
I'm Caroline Messenger. I am an Associate Ed Consultant with the Center.
Thanks. We really appreciate your time and engagement on an issue that's central to all of our work, supporting students' literacy development through thoughtful, evidence-based decision-making. Today's session is grounded in Connecticut's commitment to early identification and prevention of reading difficulties, reflected in the Unlocking Lifelong Potential initiative and our structured literacy framework. We'll be focusing on one specific tool that supports this work, the Voluntary Family Reading History Questionnaire, which helps districts identify students who may be at risk for reading challenges early on. We welcome questions throughout the session. Many of today's topics come directly from questions submitted during registration, and if additional questions come up, please use the Q&A feature in Teams. So this differs from the chat feature that you might be accustomed to. There is a Q&A feature with a little speech bubble and a question mark in it, and we really encourage you to use that throughout today's session. We might answer your questions as we provide information, but it's okay. Once we get to the end of the session, we're going to try to address every single question again that's put into that Q&A feature. During our time together, we'll talk about why family reading history matters, how the questionnaire fits in with Connecticut's guidance and statutory framework, and how this information can be used responsibly while remaining voluntary for parents, FERPA protected and respectful of family choice. Our goal is to build a shared understanding of what this tool is, what it is not, and how it can be used appropriately to support early identification and timely intervention. With that foundation, we'll move into the legislative context, which Dr. Hughes kind of initiated that conversation on, and the role this questionnaire plays within Connecticut's broader literacy and dyslexia efforts. So this slide really grounds our work in Connecticut statute. Under CGS Section 1014 EE, the Connecticut State Department of Education approved the Abbreviated Adult Reading History Questionnaire, or the ARHQ brief, as the state's voluntary family reading history questionnaire, which is mandated for districts to disseminate, but voluntary for families to complete. The intent of this law is fairly focused, but important. It gives districts a consistent, research-informed way to gather family history information that can help flag students who may be at risk for reading difficulties. The statute is also very clear about what this tool is and what it is not. The questionnaire is voluntary on behalf of the parents. It is not a diagnostic tool, and it is not meant to be used on its own to make eligibility decisions. This approach reflects what the research tells us. Family history is a meaningful risk factor, but it's just one piece of a much larger picture. At the same time, the statute preserves local decision-making and respects family choice. Next, we'll take a closer look at how this questionnaire is intended to be used in practice, along with the safeguards that are just as important as the information it provides.
Research has revealed that dyslexia and other reading difficulties do run in families. So early screening coupled with early and effective intervention can greatly reduce or even prevent reading proficiency challenges, including dyslexia. So the purpose of the voluntary family reading history questionnaire is to be just another tool for schools and districts to use in conjunction with universal screeners and assessments so that students can be identified earlier and receive intervention earlier to lessen or arrest reading challenges. So while it is mandatory for districts to provide the questionnaire to families, it is not required that families fill it out. This information that is gained from the questionnaire can provide a meaningful data point, but will not diagnose or identify any reading disability, including dyslexia, in either the parents or the child. The State Department of Education will not collect this data from districts, and the information provided on the questionnaire is protected under FERPA.
So this slide helps explain why Connecticut chose the ARHQ brief as the state's voluntary family reading history questionnaire. At its core, the ARHQ brief is grounded in a strong research base. It comes from the original 23-item adult reading history questionnaire, which was developed as a dyslexia screener for adults and published through the IDA, or the International Dyslexia Association. That original tool has been studied extensively and shown to be both reliable and valid. Researchers then looked more closely at which questions from the full ARHQ were most useful in identifying a family history of reading difficulties. From that work, 6 questions emerged that still provided strong, meaningful information. Those 6 questions became what we now call the ARHQ brief. The shorter format is intentional. In school settings, which all of us come from, tools need to be efficient as well as informative. The ARHQ brief can be completed quickly, doesn't create an undue burden for families or staff, and still adds value when it's used alongside other screening information. And just as important, this tool is not meant to diagnose dyslexia or reading difficulties. Instead, it's one piece of the puzzle, something that helps districts identify possible risk early and think proactively about screening, monitoring, and instruction. That balance of being research-based, efficient, and clearly limited in purpose is what made the ARHQ brief a good fit for statewide use.
Great. So how shall districts disseminate the questionnaire? So this school year, districts must begin to administer the questionnaire, which of course is the ARHQ brief. And that means that districts must distribute it to the families of their K-3 students. It's recommended that they do this during the winter universal screening process or as part of their parent-teacher conferences. Then that information should be triangulated with the information gathered from the K-3 literacy universal screening assessments and any other relevant assessment data. It's important to remember that while this is mandatory for districts to distribute the questionnaire, It's not mandatory for families to complete it and send it back. For families, it's voluntary. Families are not required to complete it if they choose not to. Beginning next year and for each school year thereafter, it's recommended that the questionnaire be provided to families as part of the registration process. So it can be part of the kindergarten registration process. It can also be part of the registration process for new students who don't already have this information in their student file. And where can the questionnaire be found? Well, we have posted it in multiple places throughout the Department of Education's website, just so that you can find it as easily as possible. First, as you can see on the screen here, it's housed on the webpage of the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities. So on that page, as you can see on the screen, you'll see a gray box on the left-hand side, and kind of toward the bottom, you'll see a link to the questionnaire. But it's also housed on the center's webpage. So it's permanently housed in a place called Actionable Assessment, but also it's on the center's landing page. On the landing page, there's a button called New and Noteworthy, and that's where we post all new Department of Education resources related to literacy. And as the questionnaire is new, we want you to find it easily. We're posting it there for now as well. And a third place you can find it is in the Performance Office on their webpage, right along with all of their information on K-3 literacy universal screening assessments. It's all in one place over there. So each of these links on the right-hand side of the screen will take you there.
Thanks, Candace. So this slide really is just meant to help everyone get oriented before we jump into the details. When we talk about the Voluntary Family Reading History Questionnaire, we're not talking about a single standalone form. CSDE has actually developed a set of coordinated materials to support thoughtful and consistent use of the questionnaire. The purpose of these materials is to help districts understand what the tool is, how to share it with families, and how the information should and should not be used within a broader literacy system. All of this is intentional, so family history information is gathered in a way that's transparent, voluntary, and aligned with Connecticut guidance. And so on this slide, you'll just see everything, all the materials that are included in the packet on the websites. First, there's a superintendent's letter, which all of you may have read. That letter provides statewide context and helps clarify the purpose of the questionnaire, so districts are starting with consistent messaging. Next, the questionnaire itself is provided, and that's the ARHQ brief, which is the optional tool for families that they can choose to complete and share information about reading history. To help with communication, there is also a sample family letter that districts can adapt. It explains why the questionnaire is being shared, emphasizes that participation is voluntary, and outlines how the information will be used. The question by question guide is probably one of my favorite resources. It's another important piece of the puzzle. It provides background information, research, and family-friendly explanations for each question, helping educators really understand why the questions are included and what responses may suggest about risk. Finally, there's a FAQ document, which we will all use today and helping to answer questions that you may have, which we hope you're putting in the Q&A chat as we're speaking. And this FAQ document really addresses common implementation questions, including voluntary participation, appropriate use of the information, and confidentiality protections under FERPA. It's worth noting that both the questionnaire and the sample letter are available in English and Spanish and Portuguese, which helps support broader access and family engagement. Taken together, these materials are really designed to support consistent and responsible use of the questionnaire, strengthening early identification efforts without overusing or misinterpreting family history information.
Okay, so scoring the family history questionnaire to assess risk. The scoring is actually pretty simple. There are as was mentioned, there are 6 questions on the questionnaire, and one of them is featured up at the top of the screen that you can see. We wanted you to see that so that it would be very evident that each question is scored from 0 to 4. So 6 questions scored 0 to 4, total of 24. So what you'll do is you'll take the questionnaire completed by a parent. You'll take those 6 numbers together, one for each of the questions. You'll total those. You'll divide that number by 24, multiply it by 100 to turn it into a percentage. And that's the student's family risk score. Now, if both biological parents complete it, we score each one separately and then average the 2 percentages. And that average becomes the student's family risk score. Now, here's the key part. If the score is greater than 32%, that suggests that the student may be at higher risk for reading difficulty due to family history. It doesn't diagnose dyslexia. It simply tells us that we need to pay closer attention and review this student's universal screener results, their classroom performance, and any other relevant data. And once that's scored, the information is then reviewed with the data team, and then it goes into the student's confidential file. It's one helpful piece of data that supports early identification and intervention, and that's it. It's quick, it's simple, and hopefully it's very useful for you.
Carolyn, you're muted.
Thank you. One of the documents that's included with the Voluntary Family Reading History Questionnaire breaks down the questions being asked. The first piece of information available is the background for the question, which explains why it's being asked in the first place. So on this slide is a question from the Family History Reading Questionnaire, and this is the actual information that you will find. So you can see that the background for the question is helping you to understand why, what is the purpose of the question. The next gives you information on how to explain what the question is asking in family-friendly language. So should parents or families need further clarification about a question, districts and schools have a resource to assist in an accurate explanation. Finally, the last box is the actual research that supports why that question is being asked. So it provides you with a way to easily access the documentation should you need it. This resource is available to assist in facilitating a conversation between districts and schools and families so that accurate information can be collected. Also included is a sample letter to families that districts and schools are welcome to personalize. The letter is designed to provide accurate information about the questionnaire, its purpose, and what districts and schools can do with the information. It also provides directions for completing the questionnaire, when to return it to the district, and who will be available to answer questions about it. This letter, like the questionnaire itself, is available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. They are included in the packet of information available on the ODRD website, the center website, and the Performance Office website. Unfortunately, the information in the questionnaire are not available in Arabic or other non-alphabetic languages. Right now, there just is not sufficient evidence to support its use in those languages. So for now, it is not advisable to translate the questionnaire or the letter into a non-alphabetic language.
Thanks, Caroline. So this slide highlights the kind of questions that we've addressed in the FAQ document. The FAQ is intentionally comprehensive and is really meant to reinforce and clarify much of what we've talked about today. The questions reflect the most common areas of confusion or concern that we hear from districts and families, especially around what's required, how the information can be used, and what happens next. For example, there are questions about whether districts are required to send out the questionnaire, who can complete it, and what happens if a family chooses not to participate. All of those questions point back to the same core message. This tool is voluntary on behalf of the families, mandated for districts to disseminate, but voluntary for parents to complete, supportive, and really meant to inform decision-making, not to mandate it. You'll also see that questions related to special education referrals and reporting are included in this FAQ document. It's clear within this FAQ that the questionnaire itself is not to be used as a diagnostic tool. It does not independently trigger special education eligibility and does not require reporting to CSDE. It's simply one piece of information that you guys are probably already collecting that can help districts think proactively about risk and support. Finally, it's important to know that the FAQ is meant to be a living document. As districts begin to use the questionnaire and new questions come up from the field, our plan is to revise the FAQ to reflect those questions and provide ongoing guidance and clarification. So that's why we encourage you to ask as many questions as you can. We see some questions in the Q&A feature of today's meeting, but we really hope that any question that you have that we can address today, you put it in the chat, and then if other questions come up, please reach out to one of us, and we, if it's a question we haven't included in the FAQ document, we can add it in. So, and I think that brings us, if you want to go to the next slide, Caroline, that, we want to emphasize that you're not expected to navigate this work on your own. Supporting early literacy and using the voluntary family reading history questionnaire is thoughtfully and appropriately is very much a shared effort. And our team is here to support you as questions come up. This slide highlights the key contacts at the Connecticut State Department of Education who can help answer questions, provide clarification, or talk through implementation considerations. Whether your questions are about the statute, appropriate use of the questionnaire, or broader literacy supports, we encourage you to reach out to any of us listed here. And we, the three of us, work really closely together and coordinate our responses to make sure districts receive consistent and aligned guidance. So before we formally close, and I know we planned for an hour, but we want to ensure that we're answering your questions, we want to address any of those that have been submitted through the Q&A feature in the Teams. We cannot, if you have your hand up, we cannot unmute you. So we really need you to put the Q&A or use the Q&A feature and put your question in there. And any questions that we're not able to get to today, we'll make sure we follow up by incorporating clarifications into future guidance, including updates to the FAQ. We want to stress how valuable your questions are, and really from folks that come from the field, hearing from the field helps shape our technical assistance, professional learning, and ongoing updates to resources to make sure that they stay clear, relevant, and useful for districts and families. So if you haven't already put, your question in the chat, or not the chat, the Q&A feature, please do so now. And Caroline and Candace, do we want to start addressing those?
Sure.
Absolutely. Thanks all. Thanks, Kristen. The first question has to do with the, can we confirm the phrasing of the first question? How many difficulties versus how much difficulty did you have is what the question, the beginning of the question reads. Initially, what we had received from the researchers said how many difficulties, and because this tool has been tested and validated and it's reliable and it's inaccurate. We were hesitant to change anything, but this question did come up. So we did go back to the researchers and ask if we could change it to how much difficulty. And the researchers then got back to us and said, yes, that would be appropriate for us to do so. So if you go on our website currently, you'll see a revised edition as of January of 2026. And that question will read, how much difficulty did you have? And we also reached out to our translators for the Spanish and Portuguese versions. And it turns out that that's all set too. That didn't even need to be changed.
Thanks. I see a question here. Which grades are included? Off families K through 8 and K or K through 3? And I know this question has come up. Did either of you want to take it? Did you want me to take it?
I'm happy to take it.
Sure.
This one, okay, so the legislation is around K3. And actually, as I'm going through, I'm trying to look through the frequently asked questions because I know that I could take somebody's word for it, but I like to see things in writing. So if you, you may not have the FAQs in front of you, but if you have a moment when you're able to download the entire questionnaire and take a look at the FAQs, even the first question right there will validate what I'm saying. It is meant to be distributed, is mandated to be distributed to K through 3 families. Now, that said, going forward, we recommend that districts just make it part of their registration packets for all new students who don't already, especially those who don't already have this information in their student files. So that would be a part, it would be a part of kindergarten registration, and it would also be a part of the registration process for anyone. It's just it could be just very valuable information to have on all students, even if they are older than 3rd grade, for grades 4 and beyond.
Thanks, Candace. Yeah, so the mandate is for K3 to align with the universal screeners. We want you guys to triangulate that data to determine early risk indicators. But if you have, students that are beyond, 3rd grade that you are trying to detect early risk factors for, and you need more information, beyond screeners or screeners that you're using, you can for sure use this voluntary family reading history questionnaire in order to collect data. I know a couple districts have reached out saying, can we use this in 4th and 5th grade? We are not stopping you from doing that. It's just, it is mandated right now for dissemination in K through 3. I think we have a couple questions that are aligned, so I'm hoping we can tackle them together. And it's really about the completion of the questionnaire, if they could do it electronically or only on paper, and then where the districts should house the survey and the scoring results. So I don't know if we want to tackle kind of both of those at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So in terms of housing the questionnaire, it should live with the student's file. So if a student comes up in discussion, in student assistance team meetings, or any kind of meeting that you may have regarding needs that the child might have, this information would be readily available to the people conducting that meeting. Right now, we are offering it to you paper pencil. That does not prevent you from turning it into a digital form, should that be more convenient for you. You just make sure that the questions are typed accurately and that parents have the choices that are on the actual questionnaire.
Thanks, Caroline. And those answers can be found on page 9 of the FAQ in case you guys wanted to reference that. So on one of the questions on page 9 at the top, it says, family, that the information should be kept in the student's confidential record. And then there's another question in terms of the electronic version, and we state that districts are welcome to upload the questionnaire into a digital communication platform of their choice. So you can, again, if your district is asking these questions, you can turn them over to the FAQ and point them out there.
Great. I see a question about sharing the slides. Already, we've had a webinar already, and that webinar is posted right next to the questionnaire, where you'll find that in those the questionnaire on our 3 sites, on the Office of Dyslexia site, the Center site, and the Performance Office site. And we are also recording this session, so the slides will be available through that recording.
There's another question about what exactly is communicated back to the family about the score and how. And so it's in that same, if you look on page 9 of the FAQs, it's actually in the same answer as the confidential record. And so we just indicate that if the results indicate that if a student is at increased risk for reading disability or dyslexia, that information be shared, with the school district data team to review in conjunction with the student's universal screening data or other relevant assessment data. And, I think there's another, and I don't know if Candace and Caroline, you could find this in this FAQ document, that we encourage you to share the results, obviously, with the families as well, to foster that family engagement component that we hope for that comes out of districts.
Yeah.
But I know
just
Go ahead.
keep in mind, this is not a diagnostic tool.
Mm-hmm.
It does not mean that dyslexia or reading difficulties are present. It is just a tool to be used in conjunction with other information.
Right. Okay, I see another question. Will the Department of Education collect information about how many families are responding to the district and how about this is all information that's protected by FERPA. We are not we are not going to ask you for any of this information. We're not going to ask you about how many family members are complying because, listen, it's completely voluntary on the part of the families. So yeah, that's it's for the district.
Yeah, and that's on page 9 of the FAQs as well, that the CSE will not collect the data. In terms of how we will monitor districts, really that's, good faith on your part. And again, it's really to determine early risk indicators. So if you are, going to an initial PPT or you feel that a student has risk for dyslexia, having this information is going to be super helpful in, triangulating that data because the research shows that there is a genetic component to dyslexia and other reading disabilities. So I know, for myself, being a former special education teacher, I would be nervous about sharing results at a PPT, stating that a student, was found eligible with a disability. And then after I, shared my results from the evaluation, the parent would go, this sounds just like the difficulties I had when I was in school. And I was like, oh, I wish I knew that before. So I didn't feel so anxious about sharing the results and letting these families know that their child did in fact have a disability that required specialized instruction. So, sometimes it's that piece of the puzzle that helps in multiple ways. So, we are not going to monitor how districts are complying at this point in time, but we know based on research that this information is very informative and can help districts and families come to conclusions that may be needed to help support students.
Right. And in a preventative way, right?
Yes.
So that we can get to them as soon as possible with support and not have to wait until many years later, they're failing, they're struggling. Yeah, we want to prevent that.
Don't see any other questions in the Q&A at this time. Do you guys see any?
Do you anticipate an increase in special education referrals as a result of these questionnaires? And will districts be penalized for having too many students? with IEPs if their identification increases. Again, this is actually meant to be a preventative measure so that that doesn't happen. Research is pretty clear that the sooner we can get to students with the proper evidence-aligned instructional support that they need, that's really targeted to their needs, that their outcomes are much better outcomes for them. So we're really trying to avoid that piece and get them the help that they need early on.
And again, to reinforce what Caroline had said, like, this is not a diagnostic measure and it shouldn't be utilized in the way just because the results come back that there is a family history of dyslexia. That does not mean the student has dyslexia. It's really just another data point to triangulate with other screening measures, other tools that you're using within districts to determine, you know, what the students' needs are. So please don't, again, I want to reinforce that this measure alone is not supposed to be used as determinant for a disability. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. So we thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Oh, did another question come in? I don't want to.
I don't see it.
Oh, I do. Sorry. I'm going to rephrase we're not there yet, but it is having just one parent complete the survey as valid as having both complete. Should we mention that in the score? I think that is covered in the FAQ. Do you guys have that information? Oh, there it is. I see it. So it says the voluntary family reading history questionnaire is intended to be completed by both students' biological parents, but if one or both biological parents are unable to complete it, it may be completed by a caregiver who is well acquainted with the history of the biological parent. However, it should be noted on the questionnaire that it was not completed by the biological parent. So I would think it would be the same for if just having one biological parent, you know, was completing the form, just kind of documenting that when you're scoring it. Caroline or Candace, does that sound correct or?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I'm looking on page 8.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you were reading from?
Yeah, the top of
Yep.
page 8 in the FAQ.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Perfect.
Okay.
Anything else?
So now I will say thank you for taking the time to be with us today and for your engagement in this important work. We really appreciate your thoughtful questions, your commitment to supporting students and families, and your willingness to think carefully about how tools like the voluntary family reading history questionnaire can be used responsibly and effectively. We hope today's session helped clarify the purpose of the questionnaire, what it is, what it isn't, and how it fits in within Connecticut's broader literacy and dyslexia efforts. Please stay connected. Don't hesitate to reach out with questions and continue to share your feedback as you move this work forward in your districts. We look forward to continuing these conversations and truly supporting you along the way. And you've bought back 20 minutes, 21 minutes of your day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.